Good Tuesday afternoon, and thank you for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Rena Sargentopoulos. Developing right now, Manny Collins' father has been arrested in connection to his son's death. Jordan Collins Sr. is now in the Anoka County Jail, being held on suspicion of second-degree murder. He has not been formally charged. The 16-year-old was last seen alive on May 8th. Back in June, the search for Manny had shifted to a landfill in Elk River after police saw surveillance video that looked like the boy's body was thrown into a dumpster in Columbia Heights. Just over a week ago, police found Manny's body in that landfill. When the sheriff made that announcement, he said the medical examiner was still trying to determine Manny's cause of death. Over the phone last night, Manny's mom, Ashley, said she is filled with emotions. She had just gone to see her pastor before Jordan Collins' arrest was announced.
I felt like it was something he wasn't telling me from the beginning when he acted like he was helping us look for him and then he disappeared. It's 100 red flags. I feel like there's justice. I feel like the detectives are doing their part. Like, I'm praying for them as well. And I'm just praying that whatever happens down this road, he doesn't happen to, I don't know, I'm hoping justice be served.
Here are some next steps that we will follow: a formal charge for Manny's father, a cause of death from the medical examiner, and some conclusions by multiple agencies who, as of last night, were still investigating. Today, the death toll from the catastrophic flooding in Texas is still going up. More than 100 people are now confirmed dead, with dozens more still missing, and rescue crews working around the clock to find any remaining survivors. President Trump said today he will visit the area on Friday. Jay Gray has been on the ground in Kerrville, Texas since the beginning. He is there now with a closer look at the devastation.
Well, the Texas Hill Country now in what is the 5th day of the search, rescue, and recovery effort here. We saw choppers in the air well before the sun came up here, and so it's still a 24-hour process, hoping for a miracle, hoping to find someone in what is debris like you see here. All of this pulled from this home, and the people who were here got out as the mud, as the water rushed in, and now they begin slowly to shift towards some type of cleanup here. And really, when you talk to those on the ground, the survivors, they're quick to tell you there's no one in Kerrville or really even Kerr County that has not been affected by what's happened here.
You can't hardly not be affected by the trauma that's going on here right now. I've seen they have had bodies yesterday, day before yesterday, right here, and right here in my backyard, and we just pray for them and just hold them deep in our heart. One of my girls that used to work here, her daughter was at Camp Mystic and didn't make it, and so our heart is just broken over that.
I mean, you can hear the emotion, you can hear the pain of what's been lost here. This is a community that continues to struggle, continues to hope that some of those, the dozens that are missing, will be found alive here as they do make that slow turn toward starting to clean up, starting to face some type of recovery. That's sure to be long, difficult, and they're going to need some help along the way. That's the latest from here in Kerrville. I'm Jay Gray, NBC News.
As Texans brace for more rain this week, a Minnesota couple is also picking up the pieces after losing everything in the floods. For the last 8 years, Lyle and Sue Glenna were living in Ingram at one of the many campgrounds along the Guadalupe River. Their son still lives outside of Mahtomedi and got the frantic call from his mom Friday morning. The fire department evacuated them, and the couple tried to save others by honking their car horns.
They grabbed some clothes and their car keys, and they got into their truck and their van, and they drove around the campground blowing SOS on their car horns to try and alert as many people as they could for as long as they could. They stood at the top of the hill and watched their friends and all of their life get washed away.
The situation's so stressful, Lyle even suffered a heart attack in the midst of it all. He was released from the hospital yesterday. Even days after devastating flooding tore through central Texas, the destruction left behind is still hard to fathom. As the recovery efforts continue, allegations have been flying about how these flash floods became so deadly. Kent Erdahl takes a closer look at what went wrong and what we can learn from what happened.
With search and rescue efforts still underway and the threat of even more rain still on the horizon, many in Central Texas are also trying to figure out how such wide-ranging death and devastation caught so many off guard.
Everyone here, if we could have warned them, we would have done so. And we didn't even have a warning.
The mayor of Kerrville, Texas, told CNN when he checked at about 8 p.m. on July 3rd, he hadn't received a flood warning or notification.
I have to be honest, meteorologists rely on weather models. The models don't do a great job yet predicting extreme weather events.
But former CARE meteorologist Paul Douglas says the National Weather Service did issue a series of escalating watches and warnings when the threat became clear.
It's easy to point a finger of blame at the Weather Service. I think they did everything right.
According to Homeland Security, warnings about flooding risks north and west of San Antonio, including Kerrville, began just after 6 p.m. on July 3rd. By 1:14 a.m. on the 4th of July, it issued a considerable warning, which triggered alerts on phones and NOAA weather radios. Then, at 4:03 a.m., it was upgraded to a flash flood emergency.
When you hear a flood emergency, that means potentially life-threatening flooding is already underway. Take action now. I think where things broke down was on the ground, translating that flood emergency into action. Let's move people now.
This 30-minute time-lapse video of the flooding that hit another Central Texas river later on Friday shows why that type of coordination was so difficult.
This biblical flood hit late at night. People were asleep. Sketchy cell phone service throughout the hill country of Texas. There was no infrastructure, no warning system on the ground. There were no sirens blaring.
He says that's something that might change in the aftermath of this kind of devastation.
Problem is, it's a big area, hundreds of thousands of square miles. You need hundreds of sirens and special rain gauges, and that costs money.
But even if it happens, he says it will still take everyone to take action when it matters.
What some call warning fatigue. I mean, they're always getting flood warnings for that part of Texas. It's prone to flooding. People, after a while, well, it's just, we get warnings all the time, and it becomes noise.
Paul says the best life insurance policy is to have a NOAA weather radio. They typically cost less than $50, and you can set them to just the county that you live in, and they will notify you even in the middle of the night. A heads up to UCare members, starting this September, the nonprofit health plan provider will temporarily withdraw from Medicaid in nearly a dozen Minnesota counties. The move will affect about 88,000 Medicaid members. UCare is citing significant losses because of mismatches between government payments and the cost of care. The provider says it will work with the state to ensure continuity of care, but it is not clear yet when UCare plans to resume that coverage. New today, showing the aftermath of new Israeli strikes in Gaza as Israel and the Hamas terrorist group iron out a ceasefire deal. Officials on the ground are reporting at least 40 people were killed. The agreement would stop the fighting and initiate a hostage prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas. Developing now, President Donald Trump says the U.S. is sending more weapons to Ukraine to defend itself in its war against Russia. The Defense Department had recently halted weapons shipments to Ukraine, citing concerns over the U.S. military stockpile. That was despite a military analysis that showed the U.S. military readiness would not be affected by sending more munitions to Ukraine. No details were provided on the specific weapons that will head there. An encouraging update today. State Senator John Hoffman is out of the ICU 3 weeks after being shot in his home in an assassination attempt. His wife Yvette shared this new photo with us. He will stay in acute care for several more weeks, and then he'll have multiple surgeries in the coming months. Yvette, who was also shot, was released from the hospital 5 days after that shooting. The man charged in the attack, Vance Belter, is also charged with killing Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark. Travelers, listen to this. TSA is making some big changes to its security checkpoints, at least some of them anyway. Starting Sunday, people at certain airports across the U.S. will not be required to take off their shoes when going through screening. Shoes, however, will have to come off for additional screening if anyone triggers the alarms at the scanners. TSA started requiring passengers to remove their shoes back in 2006. Well, if you have a few extra mosquito bites right now, you are not alone. The forecasted boom from the Mosquito Control Agency came right on schedule, but the worst will hopefully soon be behind us. Looking at the numbers, the spring started out great. For weeks, the mosquito numbers were well below the 10-year average, quickly exploding to the highest numbers they've seen since 2020. Most are a special species commonly called cattail mosquitoes. Now, thankfully, scientists can actually predict their numbers nearly a year before they hatch, and they don't live as long.
We were ready for them. We did more treatments, so, they could have been a lot worse. They have maybe 2-3 weeks when they're actually active, biting people and bothering them.
At this point in the year, numbers typically start dropping until the end of September. Now, if the numbers this week come back lower, that is a good sign that we are headed in the right direction. Stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.